Suzanne's Paparazzi Jewelry, 24/7 shopping available. 160920 is the code. Show her some love, like she showed us. K&A Custom Crafts on Facebook.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Whatever on Wednesday. I'm Joann Tierney, and I'm here with Lauren Lusby Fernandez, and she's our guest tonight. So we're going to take a comedic look at Lauren was a Secret Service agent. Now she's an author, and she's out of the White House, but she's going to dish on some secrets. And I think on a serious note, she's also going to talk about how difficult it is to navigate a male-dominated fields such as law enforcement and criminal justice, and I have a little experience in that as a woman. So hi, Lauren, and she is also characterized as the talkback Barbie. That's part of her persona and personality. So why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about you and a little bit of your history, and then we'll delve into the conversation.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I am the author of Talkback Barbie, the Secret Service edition. It just came out this year in January. And I actually graduated from Virginia Tech with my political science degree, and I went straight into the Secret Service. So I was very young, I was inexperienced, I had no military experience or background, but I made it through the whole process, which was the polygraph test. They have a small test that you have to take to enter the Secret Service as well. And then I made it through 6 months of federal law enforcement intensive training down at FLETC and up in Beltsville, Maryland. So I accomplished all that, and I worked for the Secret Service in 2005 to 2006. And after that, I went into government consulting. And now I live down in Georgia with my husband and son. And I work part-time for an energy company called JRL Coal.
All right, great. So let me ask you about the background check for the Secret Service. So, one of my dearest friends she's actually a retired FBI agent, but I remember when she was trying to get in and we were roommates, and she was in law school at the time, and they came and they interviewed all of our neighbors. They interviewed us. It was really an intrusive process, even for your acquaintances and friends. I imagine the Secret Service is a very similar trajectory.
Yes, it was exactly the same. It was so intense. I was scared. I mean, I was in college, so I had crazy stories with my friends and fun times out, but you have to have these Secret Service agents come and speak with your friends. And so I'm sitting over here sweating bullets thinking, oh my gosh, what are my friends going to say? Are they going to pass the test and let me get into the Secret Service? Then they interview all of your neighbors, friends. You have to do 10 years of any foreign travel. You have to go back 10 years to any place you had lived. So every dormitory, every apartment that I lived in while I was in college, I had to put the address and somebody who you knew while you lived at that location. It is very intrusive. And you really need to keep a really clean record because they dive into every single thing of your life that you've ever done. And if you're hiding something, they'll find it out.
And today, I think about it today. I mean, you're out of it for about 15 years now, but when you think about it today, and I certainly know I wouldn't have been hired, but think about kids today and young people coming up. I mean, they have social media scrutiny and cell phones, and I've spoken about this many times. Everybody's a camera person and a paparazzi now. So it must be so much more difficult to pass those background checks.
Exactly. And kids think it's funny to post anything and everything on social media. But once you do that, it never goes away. It's permanently out there for every single person to see. And I didn't have those issues and problems when I was younger because we didn't have social media. So it was great. But nowadays, you do have to be very cognizant of what you do and say and put out there. But at the same time, I do know that they are getting a little bit more lenient with what they're doing and who they're bringing in. And not to say they're skimping on the background checks at all. But for instance, tattoos were a big no-no. Like you were not allowed to have tattoos showing. So like you could have tattoos on your body, but when you were in uniform, they could not show outside of your uniform. And now they're getting more lenient on that. And you can see people's tattoos and stuff because so many people have tattoos. So I do know based on just experience and what I've gone through and what I'm seeing with the culture now, I think they're going to probably have to make a few little changes.
New adjustments. So tell us the story about the Talkback Barbie. How did you get that nickname? And it's stuck. You wrote a book about it, and it's an interesting story. So let's tell the listeners a little bit about that.
Well, It is a funny story how I got the nickname Talkback Barbie. So when I entered Secret Service training, obviously you can tell I'm a girly girl, but I'm very tough at the core. So once you get to know me, I'm a completely different person that I inside than how I'm perceived on the outside. So I get into training, and immediately there's this technician who is training us in the mat room. He does not like me. I didn't say a word. I didn't do one thing except for he looked at me and he said I was never going to be a Secret Service officer and I was never going to pass training, and he was going to make sure of that. So he set his goal to destroy me in training. So he set me up in these crazy situations, and I was struggling, but I accomplished, and graduated. So I got the nickname. We were out at a training session outside of the mat room doing a real life White House scenario. So I was clearing the area, and I turned the corner with my gun to clear the area, and my long sleeve shirt just went up my sleeve, went up my arm just a little bit. And my watch on my wrist sparkled in the sunlight, and that stopped the show right there. And he comes to my face, and he's already really mad at me. And he goes, "Officer Lusby, what is that on your wrist?" And I go, "What? Oh, my watch? You mean my watch?" And he goes, "Yes. Why are you wearing jewelry?" And I go, "Oh, because we're not in the mat room anymore. And I thought it was okay." And he gets so close to my face. He starts screaming, spitting. His face is bright red as you can think. And he is screaming at the top of his lungs. And he's like, "You are never to wear jewelry in my presence ever." He goes, "I need you to take that off right now." And I looked at him, and instead of just saying, "Yes, sir," which is the military environment that I was in, and that's what you're supposed to do, I said, I was startled, first of all, and in shock, but I turned around and said, "But aren't we doing a real life scenario? So does that mean I can't wear a watch at the White House? Because I'm pretty sure we can wear watches at the White House. So are you telling me that I can't wear a watch at the White House?" Oh, that set him off. He got so angry. He threw me out of training that day. I had to go call my sergeant. I had to be picked up and go back to the classroom. I was kicked out of there. Well, the part of my class that was half a mile away stopped their training, and they were like, "What's going on?" And they came down and discovered that I had been kicked out, and that I had talked back to the technician, and they couldn't believe it. First of all, my sergeant couldn't believe that I talked back to him. And ever since then, they called me Talkback Barbie, because I could never keep my mouth shut, even in a situation like that where I was nervous and he scared me, and I did cry because he hurt my feelings so bad, but I couldn't keep my mouth shut, and I've never been good at that. And that's how I get the nickname Talkback Barbie.
And I think that's so common, that women feel as if they, need to be shut down. And it's remarkable that you have a voice and you use it, and that's
Right.
probably really a testament to your success.
Well, it was just the situation was just so crazy because he knew I was right, and that's why he got so angry. He knew that I was wearing a watch, but we were doing a real life scenario. I knew that there was no jewelry allowed in the mat room, and so I was never wearing jewelry in the mat room. So I didn't think anything of it when we're doing a real life scenario and we're outside the mat room. I thought it would be okay. And so I'm just the type of person, like what you said, I have a voice, and if I think that I'm right, I want to speak my mind, and I want to let people know or question things. I'm not a yes woman. Like, I just don't say yes to something. If you tell me to jump off a bridge, I'm going to question it, and I'm going to sit there and think, hey, should I do this? Is this the right thing for me to do? I'm going to think through it, process it, and then I'm going to make the best decision for myself, regardless if that's the right or wrong one. I think through things. I don't just take people's word for everything that they tell me to do. And that was kind of a great example of that.
Yeah, I love that story. So tell us that you were in the White House during the Bush administration, and tell us a little bit about that. And you told me that there's a lot of fun after hours, I assume, when the president's sleeping and it's not a crisis. So I'd love the listeners to hear, and the viewers to hear a little bit more about that and what happens after dark in the White House.
So I wrote this book because every book out there and every show out there is so serious. And don't get me wrong, the Secret Service is a very serious career. You have a very serious position. You are protecting and risking your life for the president of the United States. I am not at all toning down the importance of the Secret Service, but I wanted something fun and something to laugh at. I just believe that laughter is such a good medicine, and especially in this day and time and this world we live in nowadays, I want something to laugh at. And so I wrote the book because I really wanted to focus on laughter and the side of the Secret Service that nobody sees. So we have so many stories, but of course, me being young, blonde, and extremely gullible, my class picked on me all of the time. So I got picked on and they would always have me do something over the radio. And if you know anything about the radio that we carry around the Secret Service, you know that the radio goes to every single person that's working at the White House. So anytime you make a mistake or you say something really stupid on the radio, everybody hears it. So there was an instance where they were prank calling me and they called down to my post. It was kind of later in the evening when things are kind of dead in DC. And they told me to call out the VIN number and the tag number on the car that was sitting at my post. So I thought nothing of it. And I hopped out of my post and I went over the radio and I start calling out this tag number. And they call in and they go, Officer Lesby, what is this in regards to? And I said, somebody called me and told me I need to call in this car down here at the post, at my post. And they go, nobody said to do that. We don't need to call in any tag numbers. And so they were doing this stuff to me constantly, where just picking on you, pranks. And then if you work the midnight shift, it's always the best because you can watch DVDs, Sudoku, you can play, read books. And a lot of times you're on shift work, so you're sleeping on post, which is one of the worst things you can do. Because if you get caught, you're in so much trouble because you're risking everything that's going on if anything were going to happen. But we had so much fun playing pranks on each other and just joking around. And when we were in training, I would walk in and the guys I caught some of the guys like peeing on each other in the laundry room while they were doing laundry. So, I mean, the stuff that goes on, I'm sure if you know anybody who's gone through military training, it is very serious. It's the same type of situation where they're just doing these crazy, funny things to entertain themselves and to make the time go a little faster. There was even one guy who, and I'm not kidding, literally was so bored he shot himself in his own foot. He was playing with his weapon out of his holster and he shot himself in his foot. And obviously he no longer works at the White House, but it's just stuff like that happening all the time because you start getting bored and bored leads to trouble.
Yes, and I think that that's an interesting view because when we see the Secret Service on television or, and I suppose that's, although I have been interviewed by the Secret Service before, I have been interrogated. I won't say interrogated, I will say interviewed. But yeah, they're a serious.
Interrogated sounds way more fun.
They're a serious group. How much interaction did you have with the president? That's an interesting question as well.
So I personally, because I was new, you don't get the posts that are closest to the president of the United States. But when it is low, not many people are working and there's turnaround rate and all this kind of stuff, and it's Christmas. And so none of the older Secret Service officers are working at Christmas time. You are, because you're a new recruit. So you're working. So I did get to work by the Oval Office one time, which was really cool. And President Bush did enter the Oval Office and I did get to say, good morning, Mr. President. So that was cool, but you can't do anything more. I wanted so badly to pop out my camera and start taking pictures, but you can't do that. You have to be professional and you could get in really big trouble. So I didn't do any of that, but I did get to see him a couple of times on the South Lawn. One time when he was getting into Air Force One and another time he was walking his dogs. And you don't ever get to really interact with them, but you do get to see them and you get to see them up close and personal. And I did get to see the First Lady a couple of times as well. She worked heavily with the kitchen staff and she was always planning the menus and working together for all the parties. And so I saw her a bunch of times walk into the kitchen to discuss all those details.
Now, that's interesting. Do the Secret Service agents, do they have free reign in the kitchen? Do you get to eat whatever's there or you have to bring your own lunch and brown bag it?
You have to bring everything yourself. Now, Starbucks gave us a lot of handouts. We had in our break room, we had tons of free Starbucks stuff. They always gave us a bunch of stuff. But no, they do not hand out anything. However, I was very lucky and I'm a smooth talker because I like to talk a lot. So I was working a post at a White House party, and this story's in the book actually, but I was working a post at the White House party and I was right by the kitchen and I was getting hungry and I was smelling this amazing food coming from there. And I got really tight with one of the kitchen staffers, and he did sneak me some desserts from that party. And it was probably the most amazing dessert. Maybe because it was just from the President of the United States. I'm not quite sure, but it was the most amazing dessert. And of course I had to hide it and eat it at my next post when I rotated because he didn't want to get in trouble. But he did. He gave me these the name placard cards that were on their table. So I still have those to this day. And I actually still have the gold embossed napkin that he gave me as well from back when I got the desserts.
I have a feeling there it's probably more than just the name tag attached to it. They probably make some pretty decent food there. I doubt there are too many complaints coming out of that.
Oh, the chefs there are amazing. They are amazing.
Now, what about the first family? Are they accessible, or they're under tight quarters as well as the president at all times?
You know, I never saw them much at all. Now, so they have the vice president's residency as well. And I did see his daughters a couple of times, but I didn't see them up close. They were always coming in from partying late in DC with their Secret Service agents by their side. And they were always coming in limos and being dropped off. So I never get to actually see them up close and personal, but the twins were funny. The stories I heard about the twins while I was there, they would run away and evade their Secret Service agents all the time at bars. So I have jokes that I would have been there. I would have been a perfect Secret Service agent because nobody, number one, would have believed I was a Secret Service officer working with them. I could have just pretended to be one of their friends partying with them. And so they were getting in trouble all the time, but I never actually got to truly meet them. So that was kind of disappointing. I only saw the first lady and the president, and I never met the vice president either.
Yeah, so the Bush twins I've always been fans of theirs. They both seem they're both endearing and down to earth, and I really I like them. I think that too, part of it is probably their entire lives. They were raised in politics. Their grandfather, their uncle, so it's probably a lifestyle they were used to it, as opposed to. But they were young when they went into the White House, as opposed to other children who come in at a later stage in their life. So I
can't imagine going through what they went through in the lifestyle that the publicity, and them not being able to live out their teenage and young adulthood lives without Secret Service agents being right by them and by their side and not letting them experience real life. I could not imagine how hard that must be. No wonder they evaded them. I probably would have done the exact same thing. I mean, you feel like you're just constantly in a little box, and you're the president's daughters. But at the same time, that's a very hard thing to balance at that age.
Yes, and how can you pick up guys when you got the service agents right there? When you're in your 20s, and that's certainly probably on their mind, right?
I don't know how they did it.
They probably didn't. Yeah, they probably didn't. So tell us what it was like, and I know that you spoke about the training, and that's one example of. Well, I don't know if it was based on your gender, but certainly it was probably difficult for some of your male colleagues to accept a woman in that position, especially an attractive woman. And that's often the case in law enforcement. Do you have any stories about that, and how did you handle that?
Well, so my class was completely supportive of me. They saw that the technician was really taking advantage of me and putting me in situations. For instance, in the mat room, we would learn, obviously, self-defense techniques, and everybody else is paired up with someone of similar stature. And I thought I would be paired up with the one and only other female in my group, and I was not. He paired me up with the guy in our class that was 350 pounds, 6 feet, 5 inches. I'm 5'5". I was 120 pounds. And we were doing a technique where you come up from behind them, and you're in a chokehold, and you flip the person over your shoulder, over your body to the ground. And poor little me, I'm getting flipped from 6.5 feet high, and he's being as gentle as possible. He's throwing me to the ground, and I'm getting knocked out of air every single time. And I'm having to get up and do this again and again and again. And then I had to do it to him. I had to flip him over my shoulder. And the guys were supportive because they were trying to be as gentle as possible, and they were not trying to hurt me. But you can only do so much when you're falling from 6 feet high. I mean, he can only lean over so far so that I'm not falling from that height. And they were supportive. Honestly, the only issue I had in the male-dominated environment was the technician. He was the only one who truly discriminated against me, truly put me in situations all the time that he just wanted me to fail. But what he didn't understand was that what he was doing is he was pushing me harder to be better and to prove myself to him. So a lot of people look at things and they get so discouraged in life, and they let these other people, their negativity, put them down and bring them down. And I didn't let that happen. I had the support of my family. I had the support of my husband. I had the support of my class. So I didn't let him discourage me. And so what I ended up doing was fighting harder to prove myself. And that's exactly what I did. And at graduation, he actually pulled me aside and told me that he never thought I was going to graduate, but congratulations. So it was a backhanded compliment, but listen, I'll take anything at that point.
Now, do you keep in touch with any of your Secret Service colleagues, and what's the duration? Well, I guess your classmates would still be, some of them may be actively deployed in that field. And then at 15 years in, some of them might be ready to have a primetime seat now.
Yes. So a lot of them went and did special teams. A lot of the guys have gone on to something else. So I do keep in touch with a bunch of guys on Facebook. One of my team classmates, he married one of my really good friends from college. So I still keep in touch with him. And so it's just, I do keep in touch with probably a handful of the guys, probably about five or six of the guys. And we keep in touch on Facebook, and sometimes we'll text back and forth. But they are sweet. And actually some of them are getting really close to retirement already.
Right.
I think they're retired. Yeah. So they've been working there for a while. So they're having a lot of fun.
So let's talk about this. In the book, you speak about your dream to become an FBI agent, and the Secret Service is really supposed to be a springboard to get you into that. What happened to that dream, and you quickly abandoned it, it sounds like, after just a short time in the Secret Service?
I know. Unfortunately, I did, and I don't regret it. I love where I am right now. But once I entered this, even though I knew what I was getting into, I had talked to FBI agents, I had talked to Secret Service agents, I had talked to Secret Service officers, I had talked to everybody. But until you personally experience something yourself, it is really easy to say, oh, I've got that, I can do that. And then I got into the environment. I was newly married. So I was engaged, going through training. I was newly married. The shift work, the mundane tasks, the working just all the time. I was never able to, your days off could be canceled in a heartbeat. So I could have a doctor's appointment scheduled and I'd have to cancel it at the last second because I was called into work. You could be forced in 4 extra hours on a shift. So it's just it was just very difficult to have a social life. And I was very young. I was 23. And so that wreaked havoc on me. I was extremely tired, and I wanted to have holidays with my family. I was working all the holidays because you're a new recruit and that's what you do. So I was going to my dad wanted me to stick it out the 3 years until you can move to a special team and then you have more consistent hours. But because I was young and I was naive and I just the lifestyle was very hard for me. And I knew I eventually wanted to be a mom. So I just think that I made an executive decision that the shift work, the traveling, the not being there with your family on holidays, I just didn't think it was going to work for me. And that's why I never pursued any further with the FBI, because I knew the FBI would be even worse in the sense of you move around every 3 years to different stations all over the states. You're not guaranteed any of your top 3 choices that you pick when you pick a state. So me knowing that, I felt like if I was going to be the mother that I wanted to be eventually, I knew that I was not going to be able to, I had to choose either my future career or being a mom. And I chose that I wanted a more consistent schedule and to be a mom. And so I went into government consulting because the work I still was using my top secret SCI clearance. So I was still using that, but the work was consistent. I worked 8 hours a day and I was able to have holidays and time off. And that's kind of what changed my perspective and my dream of not going into the FBI.
So as I spoke about earlier, so one of my best friends is an FBI agent, and she had a similar story. You know, at the time we both discussed going to law school. She pursued it. I went a different path. But when she went into the FBI, the same thing. She didn't get her last choice was New York City, and she was assigned to New York City. And you know, in New York City, and I don't know how familiar you are with it, but the traffic is terrific. And she also received some gender bias. So she would hop in the car. They would send her for the coffee. Here she is, an FBI agent. She said it would take her 2 hours to get to the coffee, 2 hours to get back, and then she would come back. They'd send her out to lunch. I mean, she stuck it out, and she moved all over the country, and she didn't end up coming back home in the last probably 5 years of her career, and she was able to be a mom, and she ended up being one of the lead trainers at Quantico, but it took a long time to get there. She actually met her husband in the FBI, and they both ended up at Quantico. But you're right, that's a difficult path. And Tim Fielder, we have a viewer. Hi, Tim, and he's saying, FBI, I'm out. Tim is in the military, and he knows that life well. So he opted a different path as well. But the FBI is certainly a tough challenge. So
it is, and I knew that going in. But like I said before, until you personally experience it, you think you can handle all this kind of stuff. And now I think I would have continued my dream had I been single. If I had been single at the time, there is no doubt in my mind I would have probably kept working for the Secret Service or maybe even gone into government consulting, gotten some work experience, and then gone into the FBI, because I needed at least a minimum of 3 years professional work experience in a career before I could even apply to the FBI. So whether that was government consulting, whatever it might be, it doesn't matter. But if I was single at the time, I think I would have pursued that. There's no doubt. And the training on your body, I cannot imagine going through that in my mid 30s, because the cutoff is age 37. So I'm too old now to do it. But I couldn't imagine doing that in my 30s. It was so much easier in my 20s.
Well, not only that, I'm losing my train of thought about what I forgot. Oh, but not only that, back then, to be an FBI agent, and it changed a little bit after September 11th, because then they were looking for people who are bilingual and who could speak Arabic. But for a long time, unless you were an accountant or a lawyer, it was very difficult to get into the FBI, because that's who they were looking for. They wanted you to have a professional degree on top of your college degree, and then the 3 years of work experience. So yeah,
it still is difficult to get in. I mean, passing the polygraph, the background checks, all of that. Then you have to pass Quantico training. So it's not just a hop, skip, and a jump anymore at all. Now, I do understand that they did open up a lot more positions available, like what you were saying after 9/11. That made it a little bit easier if you had language skills, but it's still hard. I mean, you can get into the FBI if you are not an agent, and other, obviously, more consistent schedules and different stuff like that. But it's hard.
They even scrutinize your monetary situation. If you had student loans, they were afraid that you would be. That is one of the considerations, because you don't want it. They don't want anybody to be in a position where you could be blackmailed and and bribed. Actually, not blackmailed, but bribed to pay off your debts and your student loans. And many of those agents have that, because they have professional degrees, and they've been through, they have law school loans and that type of thing.
Finances are huge. That was a huge thing in the Secret Service too, because they knew that you'd be doing foreign travel and you'd be traveling abroad and you'd be around all these people. They did not want you to be bribed or anything to do with finances, where you get in the situation where you're like, wow, this is like, they're offering me $1 million. I could give up these secrets and I could give up this information. Finances is a huge proponent of getting into any of these law enforcement agencies.
Yeah, it's huge for sure. So tell us a few more stories. What else do you have that's gonna amuse us and give the listeners a little bit more insight, even to where you are now, and more about the book?
Well, I already obviously told you about the guy who shot himself in the foot. I think that's by far one of the best stories from the White House, because I thought people were joking about that, but they were not. So something funny that I have not talked about, I feel like, on any of my podcasts lately, is when I was in training, I had a stalker, and he was in my training group. He was in my training class, and I never had boyfriends. People did not invite me to prom in high school. Like, I just was not. I found out very much later in life that I think they were intimidated of me more than anything, because I had to invite guy friends that I knew to any events. They never were like, Lauren, would you go to prom or homecoming with me? No, I never had dates. So to have a stalker was very weird for me, because I couldn't even get a boyfriend, much less a stalker, right? So I'm in training, and I have this guy, and he's always sitting next to me. But the creepiest part is he starts coming to my room all the time and knocking on my door and coming and visiting me. And that was very creepy, because not only was I engaged at the time, I did not feel comfortable having another guy in my room by myself. And Not to mention, this guy was a little bit creepy too. I mean, he would eat egg. You know how most people eat egg whites? He would peel the egg white off and eat all the yolks and leave the egg white. So he already just had this very creepy vibe. So it was my birthday during the summer when I was in training, and he went and bought me a ruby necklace and earrings. And he brought them to my room and he gave them to me and he goes, "Happy birthday from a friend." And I looked at him and I was like, I can't accept this gift because number one, I'm engaged. And number two, that's just inappropriate. Jewelry is a very intimate gift and I can't accept this. So I had to be very polite and kind, but yet give it back to him without him getting angry, because he kind of scared me a little bit, where I thought, oh my gosh, if I set him off, what could that mean for me? So he ended up picking on the other girl in my class, and then he came back to me, and we ended up taking a lot of the lewd, crude comments that he was saying, because he said stuff like he would kill small animals when he was a child, and he would put like bleach in their water and watch them die, and I mean, crazy things. So we took this to the officials and we actually got him kicked out of training while we were there, because I don't even know how he passed the background investigation and the background check, but we got him kicked out of training because he just was so inappropriate and he was doing these things that were just bothering both of the females in the group. And all the guys we had supporting documentation and everything. And so that was a crazy story, but I felt so much more comfortable going through training once he was not there. So, yeah.
Well, now you're out there and you're in the public eye again, and you wonder if he's keeping track of you and whatever happened to him.
I know. I don't know, but the no names are ever mentioned in the book. So,
well, you have to check him out on Facebook, see if he's out there and what's going on. So, what do your future hold? I mean, what are your hopes and expectations and goals for the book?
So, my goal for the book is to actually get it into a Netflix or Amazon Prime or a movie. So I've been talking to a lot of people. I've been mailing my book to producers or people who know producers to try to see if we can get together and potentially write a screenplay or do something along those lines. I would really, my ideal goal is to make it is going to be Miss Congeniality meets Legally Blonde, but it's going to be about the Secret Service. And it's going to be my story. And it's just going to it'll be a lot of fun. And I just want a lot of laughter and jokes. And I just want it to be a good family friendly film. And so that's really my dream and my goal about what I want to do in the future. So I really am pursuing that by networking and just talking to people that I know and trying to talk to different production agencies and different stuff like that.
Okay, so who would you be your ideal cast? Who's going to play Talkback Barbie? Tell us.
So, I don't know. People keep asking me that, and I don't know. But I thought it'd be really fun if Reese Witherspoon's daughter played, since she was Legally Blonde, and I was like, I thought her daughter would be kind of fun character to play because it's kind of a Legally Blonde-esque movie, and I just thought that would be kind of fun. But I have no idea. I haven't even gotten that far. I need somebody who's very funny. They've got to have just a really great sense of humor and be able to just really laugh at themselves, but learn from themselves too. Not be so, all my mistakes were not stupid. They just weren't, they were not the best decision at the time, but I also just learned how much I did that actually wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but I learned about who I was as a person and what my true values were at the core. And I think that's what writing the book did the most for me, is it just showed me so much about who I truly was. And my husband actually didn't want me to write it, and he didn't want me to publish it. And he was like, I'm not so sure about you putting yourself out there like that. And I looked at him and I said, I want to, because I think that there's so many learning experiences from this book, and there's so many takeaways, and there's so much inspiration to not just women, men too, to just fight for yourself, to fight for your dream. I did not take life so seriously. Talkback Barbie could be an insulting nickname, or it could be a really empowering, encouraging nickname. And that's what I'm using it for. I'm using it to empower myself and encourage myself and to go forward towards my dreams and be okay with them changing. Obviously, my dreams changed. I went from being what I thought to be, I wanted to be an FBI agent, to now I'm a writer, and I'm basically I'm talking about my book and promoting my book. But it's not even about my book. It's about the message that Talkback Barbie sends in the book about fighting for yourself and fighting for your dreams and fighting for what matters, which is your voice.
Now, what advice would you give to young women and I don't know, or men, or young women or men who are coming out there and pursuing their dreams and they may run into some obstacles, particularly in those fields, in any field, but certainly in the criminal justice community, it's much more difficult to land a position, particularly for females. It's certainly opened up and the opportunities are greater than they ever were, but there are still some, there's some gender stereotypes and there are some biases that women have to face, and that's just the reality. It's still a divided, I'd say, divided populace in regard to women's equality, particularly in the male-dominated fields.
Well, my first piece of advice: don't let people walk over you. If you have something to say it. Put yourself together, hold yourself together, but always know that even if you might be wrong, that number one, own up to it, learn from it, but don't let people put you in a box. Just because people tell you who you need to be and they might discourage you and try to make you fail like the technician did for me, I didn't let his discouragement and his just beating me down, I didn't take that to my core. If anything, I used it as fuel to the fire and I kept fighting. I kept fighting for what I wanted. And what I wanted was to prove to him that because he judged a book by its cover, I wanted to prove to him that he was wrong by judging a book by its cover, because he didn't know me internally and he didn't know me inside and out. He didn't know that how strong of a person I truly was. And that's what I tell people all the time. You need to fight for yourself and what you want. If you want that promotion, fight for it. Go and do everything you can to get that promotion if you feel like you deserve it and you feel like you've earned that. Prove yourself to people. And I think that's what I've done with Talkback Barbie. I've proven myself to people. Yes, we all make mistakes, we all misspeak, we all do stupid things, but you learn from those and you learn through laughter. And I felt like the laughter is the best medicine. If you trip and fall, laugh first and then get up and keep going. Keep pushing forward. And I feel like because I've laughed at myself and all my mistakes that I wrote about in the book, I feel like that's what's empowered me to talk to people and not be scared of tripping and falling or making a mistake, because we all make mistakes. Like, who wants to sit there and look at Facebook and think that everybody's so perfect and they've never made a mistake in their life? Because that's not true. We all have, and our Facebook lives are not what they are in real life. And I want people to know that that's okay to have a life that is real. And I want to be real with people and honest with people. And I want that to be what Talkback Barbie's all about.
So I love that. I love all of that. Now, I know that you're a mother. I mean, do you have daughters or sons, and how are you raising them to?
I have one son.
One son?
And he is, yes, I have one son and he is a firecracker. He is me. He is mini me. And he is a tough cookie. I mean, that kid can do 30 plus one-handed push-ups. I mean, the kid is a solid muscle. He has 0 ounces of fat on him. But I'm raising him to be how I preach to everybody else about what I did. Just being hard, loving other people and being open and encouraging others, but being strong and not letting people walk over him. And there was a story at school where one day these kids were just calling him a nickname. And it wasn't a mean nickname. They were just calling him Nancy. They thought it was funny. But I didn't know it hurt his feelings because he was kind of laughing about it. And they kept doing it. And when they left, I dropped his friends off. And when they left, he started crying in the car. And I looked at him and I said, "What's wrong?" And he goes, "That's really bothering me that they're calling me Nancy. It's hurting my feelings." And I looked at him and I said, "But that's just a name." I go, "A name is what you define it to be." I said, "If you turn around to everybody and you tell them, 'Oh my gosh, I love the name Nancy. That's my grandmother's name.' Or, 'Oh, Nancy, that's my favorite name ever. I love that. Nancy Pantsy,' and I go, and you make light of the matter, I go, I promise you, they will never make fun of you again because they're going to know that it doesn't bother you. If they know that it bothers you, they're going to keep going on and on." And so he actually listened to me. And they have yet to ever call him Nancy again because he just started standing up, or he started calling them kind of a little nickname back. And they realized that it wasn't bothering him anymore, and they stopped. And he's never been called that nickname again. And it wasn't even like it was anything mean, but I taught him to just not let words like that define who you are. If you do, it's only going to make you discourage you and bring you down as a person. And that happened to me in high school as well. They were just joking with me. And one day they called me a pig. And, in high school and middle school, you're just trying to hurt people's feelings, right? So you're just trying to call out any name you possibly can because you just want to hurt somebody's feelings. And I remember turning around and I looked at them and I go, thank you so much. Thank you for calling me a pig. And they looked at me like this and they didn't understand. I go, I love pigs. They're my favorite animals. I really want to have a pig as a pet. And that is actually a compliment. They never called me a pig or any other nickname again, because I realized that it didn't bother me at all. And that I was going to obviously turn it around to something positive. And that's what I did.
That's a great story. And I think that that's true. I think that that's also rooted in insecurities when people do take those things to heart, and it's really difficult to overcome them. I think people, especially teenagers and middle schoolers, they certainly prey on other students' insecurities, and hurting people always, when they hurt you, they're hurting in some respect themselves. I mean, middle school and high school is certainly it's difficult to navigate that terrain for sure.
It is. It's so hard, and it's not. And I'm not saying that was easy. Believe me, I got my feelings hurt a ton in high school, and it was never easy. But it's something to say about yourself if you can have that internal strength and that internal fire to not. Obviously, words hurt, but maybe use it as helpful criticism. Use it to fuel you. Don't use it to fuel anger, but use it to make you a better and stronger person. It might hurt you, but figure out a way to turn that around and realize what you just said, that they're probably the other person who's saying that to you is probably hurting, or they're insecure in their own way. And so find out why they're maybe insecure and see if you can talk to them about it. Maybe they'll talk to you about it and you become really good friends. Words hurt. And I know that time in life it's so difficult. I mean, I like I said earlier, I never got invited to homecomings, proms. I mean, I thought there was something wrong with me, honestly. I mean, I just couldn't understand it. And now I'm older, I'm almost 40, and I sit there and I'm looking at some friends from high school, and I hear these stories, and I ended up finding out through the grapevine that a lot of people were intimidated by me. And I didn't understand why, but it was because of my strength, and I was always standing up for myself. And I did always have a mouth on fire because I was always getting kicked out of the classroom and sent to the hall. But I realized that I didn't even know back then that I had the strength that I have. And that's what helped push me through the Secret Service and helped me get through the Secret Service, is this underlying strength that came out because I was pushed to my maximum limit. And that's why I think I got to be as strong as I am today.
I think that's a really great concept, reframing things, and that's really what it is. I mean, and that's one of the hallmarks of neurolinguistic programming and mindset work, is that when you're able to turn a situation around and reframe it, it really changes your entire life. And I remember too, once when my son was younger, and he, was bringing his cupcakes to school on the bus, and at the time I think he was in third grade, and I found out later it was a kindergartner, but regardless, so the kindergartner took the cupcakes and smushed them all up before he could get to the bus, and get to school, and he was heartbroken. Mm-hmm. And then when we came out and I realized, and I was furious, I called the principal, and the principal was furious, and we launched this big investigation, and it turned out that it was a kindergartner, which of course didn't excuse it, and it didn't change my son's heartbreak. But we took a look at it and we said, obviously this is a kid, and the principal told us his family life was very difficult. And I said, well, maybe he doesn't have a friend. And I have 3 sons. My 3 sons really approached that child and embraced him and tried to form a friendship with him. He wasn't necessarily receptive, but again, he never bothered them again. And I think that's, I think he just had never, or I don't want to say never, of course, that's an absolute, but he was struggling with kindness in his life, and the school was trying to accomplish that. So I think if you can turn around and be kind in some instances, in middle school and in high school, it's tough. Well, high school, it's not tough to be kind, but middle school is certainly a difficult journey for sure. I don't regret those. I mean, I don't what's the word I'm
Yeah,
looking
I don't want to go back.
Yeah, I don't envy those kids for sure. It's so much more difficult. And the
It is.
social media, they not only is bullying prevalent in person, think about the social media outlets that people have to struggle with and read about themselves. And of course they disappear in 30. Some of them, they're mostly Snapchat, right? What is that, 30 seconds? I forget the whole scoop on that. I'm not necessarily savvy on that.
It's awful. Social media and just how easy it is behind a screen to type in these mean, hateful things and words to people. I mean, I couldn't even imagine what it's like to be famous and have these people constantly berating you and saying these horribly mean things. I mean, I can only imagine you cannot read them. I mean, could you imagine how much they affect you and what you do every single day? Because it starts to get in your head if you read that all the time, over and over and over again. That's why it's so important to be around positive, free spirit, like loving people who, that lift you up, because that negativity will just constantly bring you down, and it just puts you in this pit of despair where you really just don't think you have anything to live for and be in your life.
True. And I think as mothers, it's really important to teach your children that. I don't want to say mothers, let's say parents, because obviously a father's role is equally as important. And that's great. That's a great insight. So let's talk about interviews. Who's your dream interview? Who are you hoping to get in front of and have a conversation with? Besides me, obviously you fulfilled this dream, and we're here together. But who would be your second choice? Who would you like to go out into the world and talk to and let them give them the tip about your book?
Well, I will be completely honest. I would love to have an interview with Jenna, because she was there, Jenna Bush, and she was there when I was working, and I just feel like she would have so many fun stories to tell me about what they did. I just think that would be a cool interactive interview and experience. And now that she's on, it's the Today Show, I believe, right?
The Today Show, yeah.
And I just think that would be so much fun, because I was there while her father was president of the United States. And I just think that would be really cool.
That would be. So have you done any outreach to the Today Show or NBC?
I have not yet. On Instagram, I've done that, because I make a lot of comments on threads and different things that they put out. And I have sent them a message on Instagram. I don't have any of their emails or contact information, but I'm putting together basically kind of a media portfolio type thing about what I want to say and what I want to do and how I want to present it. And I will be reaching out to them eventually. I'm just trying to make sure I have all my eggs in the basket and eggs in a row, and make sure that everything is the way I want it to be, because you kind of only get sometimes one chance, and I want to make sure that it's the right one.
So when we get off camera, I'll give you some inside trader tips on how you might be successful to get some outreach in, and that'll be interesting.
That would be awesome.
So perfect. And so we're getting close to the top of the hour, and I don't know if you want to tell us anything more about you, any upcoming endeavors. Is there going to be a second book? Is there a sequel? Life in global in governmental consulting.
I know.
Is that volume 2, or is your aspiration to be an author, or are you just a jack of all trades and you're going to stay where you are and hope to really turn this into your fortune and success story?
Well, my goal is definitely to turn this into a movie or show. Obviously, like I said before, I was one and done when I wrote this book. This book was just to share my story and tell everybody what fun I had in the Secret Service and how fun it was and my experiences. But there might be a second book, but it might be completely fictional, but a little bit based on my life, but maybe going into the FBI or something like that. I don't know. I want to, right now, my primary focus is to really focus on this book and where it's going to go from here. And I want to make sure that I don't get too busy and too off track trying to focus on another book. You know what I'm saying? So that because I do really want to promote this one, because this is my story. This is how I've become who I am today. And the second book would just be more for entertainment, and definitely for maybe a second season of a show or something along those lines. But yeah, I think I want to stay very focused on this and continue doing my podcast, YouTube shows, Facebook Lives, different radio programs I've been on. I think I'm going to try to focus on that for right now and see where it goes. Because if I have time and someone's producing the film and I've gotten that off my plate and that dream's fulfilled, maybe I'll start working on book number 2.
Perfect. Now, if anybody wanted to reach out to you directly, how can they find you?
My website has everything. It's talkbackbarbie.com, and it has all my social media links. You can actually order my book. It's a paperback book through my website. And if you do order it through my website, I personally sign every single book that I mail out. And if you want, you can order the Kindle version from Amazon, and you can also order the paperback version from Barnes & Noble. It's available online, but it will not have my signature on it, unfortunately.
But if they have a book signing, they can fly down and get your signature.
Yes, I've done a couple book signing gigs, and those have been fun around the Atlanta area. And it's always great meeting people. It has been the best networking I could have done.
All right, great. So thanks so much for coming on. We appreciate it. It's been a pleasure, and we wish you the best of luck with the book. And of course, I close every show by thanking Chris, our producer. He's the best. So thanks, Chris, and I think you can play us out. Thanks, Lauren. It was great to meet you.
Great to meet you too. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.